HBSAB, and in the course of an academic year, we put on between 35 and 40 events. They're not all as complicated and have as many moving parts as this one. This is our second one. Show of hands, how many people were here at last year's event? So pretty good folks. Was the cat here last year, Bernie?
No, the cat was not here last year. She's meowing here. She wants to say that she was here.
Okay. So, but a couple of things to get out of the way. First of all, in lieu of speaker gifts, is that we have a ventriloquist in the audience? Yeah. Yeah, we will be making a donation to the MGH Proton Center, so thank you very much. What do they say? You don't.
It's got to be an audible switch on that thing.
Try the mute button.
So, but events like this simply don't happen without the generous and loyal support of many sponsors, and we've got a great group of sponsors. Nixon Peabody, which is one of the top law firms in the country, is a premier sponsor, as is Frank Norton. Thank you. We also have the Charmer Group with Merrill Lynch and Wealth Management. Third Company, which is a recent addition, as well as Biscom, who I know has somebody in the audience. Forrester Research is also a new sponsor, and of course we have Dan Lassiter of the Lassiter Consulting Group. So I want to thank them for their ongoing and very generous support. Give you a sense of some of the events we've got going, even though this is May, we literally do events year-round, even when people don't show up. So we've got one next week, Angels Special Interest Group, and this is our on May 19th, and that'll be a pitch night. So one of the many events we have in the Boston area, which fledgling entrepreneurs get to pitch to angel investors, potential investors about their new ideas, and that'll be held here at the iLab, which is adjacent to B School. On May 23rd, we're going to have our Crimson Dinner, which is a dinner of approximately 20 to 30 people. This will be held at the downtown Harvard Club, and we'll be hearing from Dr. Ben Hunt, who will be talking about ways in which you can use game theory to figure out, first of all, what's going on with Hillary and Donald. And speaking of game theory, maybe that'll be something with Hasbro too. I'm sure they've got games already in the midst, no matter who wins that election. But how many people here have been to a Crimson Dinner? Okay. I think it's really one of the most special events we have. They're very small, intimate, and allows for very free exchange. And we've had people like Eric Rosengren, the Fed chair locally, Fed president. We've had Scott Brown from was he in Massachusetts or New Hampshire at the time? I don't know. But it's a good time. So that'll be May 23rd. June 7th, we're going to be having our event on cybersecurity, which of course is a very hot topic, and we'll be having that here on campus. And on June 15th, we're doing an event in conjunction with the Harvard Club at their newly revamped Commonwealth Avenue place, and that'll be on managing a multi-generational workforce. So, and then we've got many other social events through the summer, and then we start up again in the fall, all again. So, anyway, thanks again. Should be a very good evening. Normally, again, I'm known as the events chair, but tonight I'm also known as Marc Perry's brother. I'm glad to have him there. I have a brother in the restaurant business who he'll be speaking next month. He'll be coming out from California, but we won't do that till the fall. But also special kudos to Renee and Julie Fry, and they did absolutely all the heavy lifting with yeah. But no, this is really their brainchild, and really they deserve a
thank you all for attending. Real quick on logistics, I want to start there. We're going to have our main panel this evening. Hopefully we'll leave some time for Q&A. And then what we're doing is moving from here over to Aldridge. So you'll find that a number of us can help guide you there, but there's 112 and 111 are our rooms. In 112 is servicing seniors, and then in 111 is the selling to seniors panel. So what we're going to do to just make sure you get up and go, because we're going to start really quickly. And what you'll find is they're fantastic groups where we're going to let you really have discussions with everyone. And so there'll be smaller group settings, but maybe a few things around overviews, but then really break out into the discussions. And you'll find some of these speakers are joining us over there. We have some new ones, whether it's Ben from Brad Thornton, who's leading one of the groups, Marc from AI Squared, Hasbro, they can talk about CAP. So please make sure to follow us over, and those discussions will be, hopefully, I think just as fascinating as this one too. So tonight, our company that my sister and I founded together is called Make and Care Easier, and it's an online mobile web platform for caring for aging parents. And so you may not see us all the time out front. Sometimes we're the label behind helping folks with, as folks get into the technology sector and area. I'll talk a little bit more, but from the Make and Care Easier standpoint, we started making great connections and thought, hey, this would make a fantastic HBS program. And so put this together for the second year, and I have to tell you, we've been so blessed, because whether it's going to be the statistics of why you all need to be thinking about how your business is getting into this marketplace, or the actual businesses that are doing real things, putting real money and time and effort into this, it is a marketplace that is not just developing, it's real. And so hopefully the discussions tonight will give you ideas and help you make connections on how you also can take that in going further. So without further ado, I have to say we are so lucky. Marc flew up from DC, and a lot of panelists have flown in from all over. But Marc has worked with the Census Bureau for quite some time now in government, and he told me before the evening that he sits on lots of statistics that are developing every day, and he's the holder of all kinds of secrets that we all might want. And all you have to do is email him, and he'll help you get access to all those secrets. So hopefully, if he doesn't say it out loud, get his email address, because this is hot off the press is what he's giving us this evening. So we're going to let him kick off and tell us why we all need to be interested in the aging market.
Marc, do I need to help you again?
He's the older brother.
We're actually Irish twins.
Alrighty, can you folks in the back hear me okay? Great. So yes, I am Steve's considerably younger brother, and I'm very happy to be here tonight. As I said, I'm a senior demographer at the U.S. Census Bureau. I enjoy coming to events like this to talk to you about population. If for no other reason than if you work at the Census Bureau, you get kind of used to being asked the question, what do you do the other 9 years of the decade? Events like this are actually what I do. So, obviously I'm a big believer in the value of statistics. Knowing about a population, I don't need to tell the folks in this room, it's hugely helpful for any business that's trying to understand market potential, growth potential, consumer dynamics and the like. And over the years, I've had many, many discussions with local people in both the public and the private sector who are trying to sort of understand some aspect of this population, be it local, regional, national, whatever. And I've seen some very successful businesses do really innovative things with census data. But sometimes all the census data in the world honestly can't help you. I'm reminded of a story I heard at a retail conference in Bentonville, Arkansas a few years ago. From a IKEA executive who said that when IKEA first opened in the U.S., I think it was in suburban Philadelphia, they thought that their store was going to do quite well, and business was good. But curiously enough, their sales of flower vases were eons higher than what they predicted. And this sort of puzzled them. Like, do Americans love flowers that much more than Swedes? What's going on here? Why are they buying flower vases at rates of 10 times what we had predicted? And the answer was a simple one. If you've ever seen people buying Slurpees and Big Gulps at 7-Eleven, Americans were confusing them with water glasses, and they were buying 6 and 8 and 10 at a time. And obviously, all the census data in the world wouldn't have helped out on that one. So, demographers like to talk about aging for a variety of reasons. First off, it's one of the few things about a population that is eminently predictable. And there are many aspects of a population that aren't. Demographers didn't actually predict the baby boom very well. I mean, after the 1930s, 1940s, we sort of thought, okay, soldiers are going to come home in 1946, there'll be a little blip, things will go back to down to normal. We didn't predict the baby boom, and just when we finally got on board and said, okay, this thing's here to stay, 2 years later, fertility crashed and the baby boom was over. Similarly, when the interstate highway system was first developed, most demographers thought that meant actually that cities were going to be bursting at the seams, because obviously if you have roads going into cities, everyone's going to want to move in and no one's going to want to move out. So in fact, demographers in St. Louis in the 1950s were trying to prepare for when St. Louis would have 1.5 million people, which obviously was quite how things turned out. So when you think of things in that front, demographers sometimes get things wrong, but I like to think that sometimes we get things right. And the thing with aging is we all age 1 year every year. Except for our presidents, they seem to age a little bit faster than that. So if we know how many 50-year-olds there are in the country, we have a pretty good idea of how many 60-year-olds there should be 10 years later. We may not know where in the country they are, but we have a pretty good idea that, they're somewhere in the country. And so the aging of the U.S. population over the last few decades can be seen in this set of maps, which I'm going to try to show you. Here. All right. So this first map, this shows the percent 65 plus by county in the U.S. in 1990. Light shaded counties had low shares of older folks. Darker shaded counties had higher shares of older folks, obviously. In 1990, 12.6% of the population was over the age 65. So there are two main parts of the country that are old, the way I see it, when I look at this map. First, you have Florida. Obviously, Florida was old because you have lots of older people moving there from all over the country. Florida attracts migrants of all ages, but it attracts a large number of the over 50 population. Whereas the second area there, the midsection of the country, the Great Plains, you have lots of older people there as well. Entirely different phenomenon. That it's old because all the young people moved away. So you have kind of two different processes going on there. So 10 years later, the 65 plus share, it actually dropped a bit between 1990 and 2000, which makes sense when you realize that people that were turning 65 then were the ones born during the 1930s. We had low fertility during the Depression, so it was kind of a temporary little reprieve from the aging process. In 2010, the share rose to 13%. And in 2014, the share rose to 14.5%. Now, the first baby boomers started to turn 65 in 2011. So the percent 65 plus has actually grown quite a bit each year. And because the peak numeric year of the baby boom was 1960, we're expecting the numbers to keep inching up quite a bit every year for the next few years. So I'm going to toggle between these maps a couple times so you can kind of see the patterns going on there. So we have 2014, 2010, 2000, 1990. So if you look, 1990, 2000, 2010. 1990, 2000, 2010. Certainly, a few things stand out to me. Obviously, the maps are growing darker over time. Great news for everyone in this room. Your market is increasing. Business is going to be good. Second, you see the growth of the older population out west. This is a region that's grown rapidly in the past few decades. And then you could sort of think, many of the people who first moved out west in the 1960s and 70s when they were young, they're turning 65 now. Third point, by 2014, Florida and the Great Plains don't really stand out on the map anymore, the way they did in the earlier decades. Essentially, the rest of the country sort of caught up. So Florida is still old, and parts of the Great Plains are still old. Other parts of the country are also getting pretty old. If we look at change between 2000 and 2010 on this map, we see exactly that. This map shows the percent change in the 65 plus population by county. County shaded dark green had very rapid growth, over 45%, which is over 10 years, that's tremendous growth. Whereas county shaded pink, which is the whole midsection of the country, they actually have declines in their older population. So they're old in the Great Plains, and they're getting older, but only because their elderly population isn't shrinking as much as their younger population. So kind of wrap that one around your head. So obviously many of the rural counties in the Great Plains had declines, as well as parts of the Mississippi Delta, parts of rural Pennsylvania as well. You can actually kind of see the aging of suburbs on this map too. So you see the counties surrounding Minneapolis, St. Paul, Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, Fort Worth, and a few of the other large cities. They also started seeing big increases in their older populations between 2000 and 2010. And again, that makes sense as well. If you think about it, these were areas that were growing rapidly in the 60s and 70s, so the original migrants moved there. They're now turning 65. You can also see the growth of the older population along the coast of Georgia and the Carolinas. The retirement communities, many of them developed, Hilton Head, Horry County, much of eastern coastal North Carolina as well. Very popular retirement communities there. And while it would appear that many western counties are experiencing rapid growth in their older population, before you kind of leave this room and rush to put in some nursing homes in Nevada and northern Arizona, a note of caution, many of those counties, they're small populations. They're big on this map, big area-wise, but they have small populations. So what sort of looks impressive actually isn't so impressive. So in fact, if you look at numeric change instead, suddenly all the action shrinks in the west of the Mississippi, and you see that numerically, the numeric increases in the older pop, it's an East Coast and eastern half of the U.S. phenomenon. And you start to really see, North Georgia pops out at me, North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, and then obviously the whole, the Mid-Atlantic, Washington, and North New York. So that's the situation in recent decades. The country's aging pretty steadily. The 65 plus share, it varies tremendously across the country. So where do we see things going? Looking ahead, we expect that in 2030, the percent 65 will have increased to about the 20% threshold, then going to 21.7% by 2040, and 22.1% in 2050. So a reminder, right now it's at 14.5%. So between now and 2050, the older share will go from 14.5 to 22%. Let's put this in perspective though. Even after this additional 35 years between now and 2050 of an aging population, the U.S. will still be younger than where Japan was 10 years ago. I'll say that again. The U.S. in 2050 will be younger than Japan in 2005. So the U.S. is getting older. The market for the older population is a growing one. It's a robust one. The country overall really isn't aging all that much when you compare it on the the US is middle of the road. It's about 85th in the world in terms of overall aging. So, while we have a very good idea of the size of the older population, like I said before, we don't exactly know where they're going to be living. No doubt some of them are going to be moving to Florida, the coastal Carolinas, Arizona, other places common with retirees. But the reality is that most people don't move when they retire, and if they do, it's typically a very short distance within their community. Relatively few people even leave their own county. Even fewer leave their own state and engage in state-to-state retiree migration. It's noticeable because of the communities, the retirement communities are noticeable. You've got lots of older people and they stand out kind of in the backdrop. But the reality is that in the bigger picture, most people age in place. They don't go to places like the Villages, Florida. Although that was the fastest growing metro area in the country last year. Central Florida, just northwest of Orlando, grew by just under 5%. So I want to talk a little bit, I've got a couple more minutes left, about data sources on aging and the older population. So the data that I use in these maps, they just come from the decennial census and our annual population estimates. By the way, nothing big. The good news, and there is some good news, is that age is one of the most common variables that the census data collects. I mean, no matter what we're collecting data on, we typically ask people, how old are you? So we have age data on everything across the board, all of our censuses, the decennial census, the economic census, all of our surveys, all of our administrative records, all of our modeling, our apps, and you name it, age sort of cuts across. And I can't confirm this, but I think it is the most common variable in all of our data. So it's there everywhere. I mean, income dynamics, life expectancy, health, mobility, leisure activities. There's likely data out there for you. The bad side, the downside, is that it can be hard to get to because just the general kind of decentralized nature of the Census Bureau's website, the federal statistical community altogether. There is no one obvious and easy entry portal for the data. I'll get to more of that in a minute. But in terms of all of these different data sources, each one is obviously going to have its strengths and its limitations. Some of our larger data sources, the decennial census, the American Community Survey, those are great if you want detailed geography. Because they're robust enough at the national, regional, local level to give you reliable estimates. Some smaller surveys, though, actually might be more interesting if you're not actually interested in what's going on in the local area, but you want to know what's sort of going on in the community altogether with maybe some kind of interesting angle. So for instance, the Consumer Expenditure Survey, which is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that looks at the spending habits of today's senior population, and it goes back in time. You can compare it to 10, 20 years ago. So you can learn from this survey at the national or regional level. Things like today's seniors are more likely to have a mortgage than in years ago, more likely to have credit card debt, more likely to spend money on education, more likely to spend money on travel, hobbies, pets. So, you don't get those insights at the local area, but it does give you insights, and I think they're valuable insights into the community overall. So, I said the bad news is that it's not always easy to find where these data exist. They're spread across websites. It's not always easy to kind of search the websites. The Census Bureau's website alone has over 8 million pages. I'm on it every single day, probably every hour of every day, and I find it hard to use. I can only imagine the rest of the world that doesn't speak Census Bureau East, trying to navigate it. So my sympathies to all of you. But there are resources at your disposal. Every state, and I know certainly Massachusetts has one, but every state has a wonderful state data center that can be a very valuable resource. The State Data Center program exists as a liaison between the Census Bureau in each state And it's a valuable program because they understand the Census Bureau, but they're at the local level. They're not like me, I'm the bureaucrat in Washington, I don't know the local data needs. State data centers do, and they kind of translate between talking to the statistician like me to say, okay, these are the data sets. They repackage things into formats that maybe are a little bit more familiar and just more helpful for people. They work with businesses. They sort of get the customer demands better than Washington. Census Bureau itself also has data dissemination specialists, all of our regional offices, and in fact also at headquarters. We have, just sort of an army of people who are there kind of at your disposal who will help you find the data that you're looking for. It sometimes just takes a little bit of tenacity and patience to kind of,
And your email address?
Yeah, that too. But I said, and finally, you can contact me. I have plenty of business cards. I've made this offer before. People always take me up on it. I won't often know the answer to your question, but I will always know who should know the answer, and that's probably the most valuable thing. The Census Bureau has just under 6,000 people at headquarters, but I've been there 20 years. Some days I feel like I know half of them. So if nothing else, I can direct your questions to the appropriate people who can get back to you.
And can we share the slides?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
So it's called ouragingmarket.com, so www.ouragingmarket.com, but I'll grab these slides from Mark, and within a day or two, we'll put them up on ouragingmarket.com for you. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I can tell you, having worked in government, it is a rare treat to have someone make sense out of all these things that you think you know what is going on, but that's great. Thank you. So next, we're going to switch over to our main panel, and I have to tell you, we are very lucky. Everyone's flown in from all over to join us this evening. So what I thought we'd do is I'm going to do a short introduction, but let each of these guys get into more of their bios as they start off. But first person, so Marc Perry's going to start for us. And I have to tell you, Marc is going to show you a presentation. You're going to get what business he's in from the advertising side. What? Oh, Dave Austin. So yeah, Marc is the same. Dave Austin. So Dave, sorry, Dave. See, I'm not Marc. I'm in sorry. So it's whenever my sister's doing this, I know it's supposed to be. So Dave is from Influent 50 and from the AARP's ad agency, which I have to tell you, it's been fantastic because they have a focus on the marketplace that we're talking about. How do you sell to these folks? And so he's helped everyone from FedEx to Time Warner, NASDAQ, and he's going to share his experience with us. Next, Will Clark, who is an HBS grad, and what section were you?
Section D.
D. So I'm a B, but took it along, we have a few D's out there. So Will flew in this evening for us and works with Brookdale, which is now the largest provider in the U.S. of senior living. So they run communities across the United States, and he's going to share with us what they've learned and what they do in their growth pattern so that we all can understand, when we're looking at the marketplace, what's growing, where is it growing, and how do you take what we just learned and apply that to business situations. Next, we're going to talk with Steve Vandegrift, who is the CEO and the founder of Pipeline Success. So Pipeline Success is probably the one company that you have not heard of yet because they've been out incognito for about 7 or 8 years. But they're the ones that do all kinds of lead management for the aging marketplace. So I have to tell you, it's an exceptional opportunity for us tonight because these are things that you're going to get to hear that you won't get to read anywhere. And you'll get to meet the person behind a lot of the things. You're going to go, oh, you do that. So looking forward to that. And then Kimberly O'Loughlin is going to wrap things up this evening, and she's the general manager of Philips Home Health. And they've launched quite a few new products and done some really exciting things in the home health area and really engaging customers, building relationships, keeping those relationships over the long term, and Philips is a leader in that space. So whether it's some of the newer companies or some of the more established companies, we have a really great preview for you tonight of what's going on in the marketplace and how it applies to maybe not just all of us from a business perspective, but our family members as well. So without that, I will set up Dave right now and give him his slides. So. Okay, my sister will.
I think it's on, yep. I'm probably going to get up and move around a little bit. It's a little disconcerting with the slides going on behind us. My name is Dave Austin. I'm with Influent 50, and as mentioned, we are an agency built out of ARP, which is both a blessing and a curse. With a name like Austin and working for an organization like ARP, you're usually first on these panels, so it's always kind of a struggle. We do have a specific focus on the 50 plus. With a history with ARP of 58 years now of serving the 50 plus, we have research and data like no other organization, and we use those assets now to help organizations to identify with the 50 plus audience. We're in a unique position to bring that skill set. And a lot of what we do right now is really educating our clients and potential clients on the 50 plus. It is nice being in a room where everyone is really focused on the audience, so you're not really starting from scratch. A lot of times when we walk in, there's this misconception of what the 50 plus audience is. And really what's happening now, and I think you're going to hear from the panel, is really a disruption in what it means to age. There is a shift in the stereotypes among everybody, I think, of what it is to experience aging. What we're seeing from a marketer's and advertising standpoint, though, is still that ageism is always present. We are constantly bombarded from advertisers with images, TV spots, that the benefits of youth, and that actually aging is about decline. It only presents challenges to those that are aging and those that are around. We've all seen those TV spots where the 50 plus are actually an easy comedic prop to sell a product. I had a number of TV spots I was going to show you, but legal got a hold of my presentation first, so I am not able to show you those. What I am going to show you, though, is a video here that we use when we're talking to our clients, and again, prospective clients, to educate them. It's called our Over 50 Plus series, and it really is talking about how when you're targeting the 50 plus, you need to speak to them directly. Showing images of a 25-year-old running on a beach just is not going to cut it. After we show the video, I'll walk you through a number of stats and really kind of walk through or debunk some of the stereotypes that we see in talking to the 50 plus audience.
No, I really don't feel like I'm 81 years old.
I think I've changed significantly as a consumer over the past 10 to 12 years.
Oh, I am most definitely a different shopper today than I was 10 or 15 years ago.
The kids are gone. You've got money of your own. You've got your wife back. You're able to enjoy building the relationship that you had like when you were first courting. Yes, there's still sex after 50.
I have the time, thankfully now, to not have to make impulse purchases.
So I feel like marketers are looking at everyone 50 to 90 and putting us in one box and believing that we're all going to be the same.
I'm getting all these spam emails for walk-in tubs and things like that, whereas I'm like, really?
Believe it or not all of us are fuddy-duddies that are, that are over 50, or, there's some very hip people even in their 60s and 70s that still want to be stylish.
I hate when I walk into a business and people think that silver is crippling, that you're washed over and done with.
And I do hope that the pendulum swings some, because let's face it, we are the ones that have worked all these years to save this money, to spend this money.
And I feel that between that 24 to 30, lots of those kids are just coming out of college and don't have a job. I wonder how can they afford these things?
I see a lot of things that are marketed to millennials that are products that I might use, but all I can do is laugh at the commercial.
We have to see ourselves in the scenario of that product being utilized to make it relevant to us.
If a marketer wants to succeed with me, then they need to focus on me, what I am looking for today.
Know your consumer and know the demographic that you're focusing your product on.
Be innovative and creative in the way that you approach me, and demonstrate that you understand that I'm an intelligent consumer. So don't use a lot of gimmicks in trying to market your products to me.
Simplify and be honest.
Spend your money on the research and on trying to find who your people really are, rather than just sending me the walk-in tub things,
If you want to have effective communication with me, please listen to me. Listen. You'll walk away smarter.
So that was a fun, creative effort. Again, we wouldn't be an agency if we didn't have a video to show. What we'll talk about now is, again, the information that we share with clients or prospective clients about the opportunity with a 50+. So as we heard, the aging population, 50% of the U.S. population will be over 50 by 2017. But what does that mean right now? 70% of the U.S. disposable income right now is with the 50+. So the buying power is pretty massive. The 50+ will inherit $15 trillion in the next 20 years. It's the largest redistribution of wealth in the history of the world. They spend $230 billion in CPG every year and make up 49% of all sales within the US. But then the key stat is 90% of all marketing dollars are spent on the 19 to 34-year-old demographic. Really doesn't make any sense. Only 8% is spent on the 50+ demographic. So in some of the research we do, we talk to the 50+ about, so what are marketers doing wrong? First, 83% of boomers say brands are making some kind of mistake when trying to appeal to them. No surprise with a lack of dollars spent. 40% think marketers don't know what's important to them, and 47% that stereotypes are inaccurate. Again, I think it's a focus of marketers on that 18 to 34, 35 demographic. They think that they can be universal in their marketing, and then when they're targeting that 34-year-old, it's going to reach the 50-year-old, which just isn't the case. So some of the stereotypes that we try to debunk. Brand loyalty. There is a belief among marketers that when you hit 50, all of a sudden the brands you've chosen throughout your life, you're stuck with them. And that's just not the case. 50% are more willing to splurge on new things now than they were younger. Obviously, with that spending power, they are. 80% are open to considering new brands for a purchase. The boomers, unfortunately, are the demographic with the largest amount of divorce rates. So what's going to stop you? What's going to make you think they're not going to change their toothpaste brand or their TV? 34% are willing to upgrade to a newer version of something, even if the old one they have still works. Again, with that spending power, they're willing to try new things. This is always one that gets us, tech savvy. They think that boomers are not tech savvy, which is just not the case. The 50 to 60-year-old, honestly, we look at as tech pioneers. They're the first generation that's grown up when they can do anything online, whether that be helping to find a retirement home for their parents, help their kids find a college, online dating, financial planning, making travel plans. The first generation to have that at their fingertips. More than 50% of those 50 to 69 are online. They're actually online more than the 18 to 34-year-old. 68% of young boomers, those aged 50 to 59, use a smartphone. That one is just going to take off. What you're seeing now more and more is desktop use declining, smartphone and tablet use really skyrocketing. In the sites that we build right now, we see about 40 to 45% of visits come from some type of mobile use, whether that be a smartphone or a tablet. And then the use of social media. Obviously, not quite where the younger audience is, but it's growing. And then finally, service and value. 74%, again, most people think 50 plus, the blue light special, they're looking for a discount. Really not the case. They're more likely to pay extra for something that offers more convenience or higher quality than they were 20 years ago. Again, that spending power coming into play. 76% said they would consider a new brand that offers higher quality and customer service. More and more we hear that customer service is the key. They're looking to learn about your product. They're not looking for that impulse buy. A lot of what we do, honestly, is educating call centers on how to talk to a 50 to 59-year-old, 60 to 70-year-old, and 70 plus. It's actually somewhat disturbing. A 70-year-old who's calling or above, the call center rep needs to be trained because that could very well be the only person that caller talks to that day. And they have to be taught how to manage that call. It can't be about call times at that point. It's about giving them the information they need to make a decision. And then 84% agree that they are more likely to consider quality and features, not just price, when they are considering a new purchase. Again, it's all about quality. These folks, again, they take their time looking for what they're going to buy. And again, it's not just the cheapest brand. Well, that honestly is my quick song and dance. Appreciate the time. Honored to be here, and especially with these folks up here. Thanks again.
We're going to break with tradition. They had, the table for us to sit down, but it is a little weird having a presentation go on behind your head if there's a gremlin in there. So, I'm Will Clark. As I said, work with Brookdale Senior Living. I can honestly say that when I graduated from HBS in 2002, I never would have thought I would have built a career in the aging space. Just quickly, how I got into the space. Was doing research on the impact of caregiver burden on well-being, and saw just a huge impact. It was a study done with a company called Healthways and then Gallup that had developed a study called the Gallup Healthways Wellbeing Index. And they showed a significant impact on caregiver productivity, caregiver well-being as a function of having to care for aging parents. I started looking around trying to find what solutions exist in the marketplace, not only to serve the senior, but also to serve the family caregiver. At the same time, my mother, who has a PhD in math, was running a National Science Foundation grant to redesign math curriculum for the state of Alabama, serving as a grandmother, serving as a mother, serving as a wife, also serving as a caregiver to her grandmother, or to her mother and to two great aunts. Coming home from my grandmother's funeral, my mother said to me, the greatest gift my mom gave me was dying when she did. And it was because she couldn't handle it. She had gotten to a point where she couldn't continue to manage all the things that she had to manage. And so I say that only to remind us that as we get excited about the aging market, we get excited about the business that this market represents for us, it's also highly personal. Every single one of us at some point in time have, will, are going to be confronted with having to address the challenges and the opportunities associated with aging. So with that, Brookdale Senior Living is the largest provider, owner and operator of senior living communities. We operate independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, home health therapy, hospice, and private duty home care across 47 states, capacity to serve about 108,000 seniors. We're about 3 times larger than our next largest competitor. So it is interesting, as folks have said, we sell a product most people don't want to buy. How many of you are counting the day till you get to go buy you some assisted living? Right? Most people are not aspiring to move into assisted living. We still talk about it today. We talked about going to build a nursing home. Right? People don't want to move into nursing homes. We've made the promise, we hear the language, I don't want to be put there. I promise not to put mom in a nursing home. Whatever you do, don't put me in a nursing home. The reality of it is we have to change the language we use around the aging market. We also have to redefine what it means when we say the senior market. So today we've already heard 2 different definitions of what it means to be a senior. The first census data talked about what it means to be a senior 65 plus. Then we talked about what it means to be an aging market 50 plus. Well, for Brookdale, the senior market for us is 80 plus. 80 plus. The average age of the resident that moves into a senior living community, even in independent living, average age for us is 82. The average age of the resident living in our community is 86. So when we talk about the aging market, and we look at all the research that's available, that talks about how seniors consume, spend their money, how seniors react to brands, how seniors consume technology, oftentimes it gets lumped into this broader definition of aging. So one of the things that I hope that we can talk about today, and I hope we can talk about in our breakout sessions, and I hope we can continue to have the dialogue, is how do we redefine what it means to be in an aging market. As I said, for us, that market is the 80 plus. It's growing at about 3%, 4% compound annual growth over the next 10 years. It'll add about 1.5 million seniors to that marketplace. That cohort is not really well understood, and I'll give you an example of something that had a real world application for our business. So we acquired 2 years ago our largest competitor at double the size of the company, and had a major strategic decision about whether or not we should spend millions of dollars investing in upgrading our wireless infrastructure. So what information could we go find about seniors' use of technology? So we went to the Pew Charitable Trust and looked at the Pew research on the use of technology. We looked at ARP research on the use of technology, and the problem was it either breaks it out as the 65 plus use of technology or the 75 plus use of technology, but remember the age of our resident, 82, 85. So we were fortunate to partner with the Stanford Center on Longevity and did a study called Rewiring Aging. And it was looking at the seniors' use of technology among the old. So that 80 plus cohort, seniors' use of technology and their impact on well-being as measured by goal attainment. And what we found in that research is that about 63% of seniors over the age of 80 are actually using some form of technology for social engagement, to stay connected with family, to stay connected with friends. And when they do that, they have higher senses of well-being, happiness, and goal achievement. So it really matters for us as we talk about how we define this marketplace and this aging market, that we understand the different cohorts that we're working with. The other piece that I want to touch on, and this is a little bit of a preview for what we're going to talk about in the breakout session, it's not only important to understand the different age groups, it's also important to understand their wants and needs and realize that the language changes as we age. So first of all, when we think about our category, for example, we don't think about seniors as individual consumers always. We think about them also as buying units. Because oftentimes in that 80 plus population, the decision for senior housing, for example, is made as a family decision. You have adult influencers, the children or a spouse, collectively partnering together to make a decision, and oftentimes their expectations are different. How many of you have read Atul Gawande's book, Being Mortal? So most have, if you haven't, I highly encourage you to read it. But one of the things he talks about that is relevant and pertinent to me, because I also have small kids, is the difference between what that adult influencer may want for their aging parent and what that aging parent may want for themselves. And he talks about it in his book about the desire for independence and autonomy among the older adult, and the desire for safety and security among the adult influencer. And so how do you balance the trade-off between independence and autonomy and safety and security when you're building products, building messaging, and marketing to those consumers for senior housing products? And I think you can apply that insight into other products. And then I'll leave you with probably one of my favorite pictures of all time. And it's over here, and you see these are the hands of a 97-year-old woman right there on the right. And we took that picture after talking to her grandson and asking him, what does quality care look like? So set the context, this woman had 4 chronic diseases, was on 12 meds, recently diagnosed with dementia. And we asked the grandson, who's the POA, what does quality care look like? And his answer was fingernails and pigtails. And what happened was there's a caregiver in our community that comes in once a week and does her hair and paints her nails. And for that family, that's what good care looks like. And so as we think about this market, I agree with what you said. It's critical that we really understand the consumer. As it was said in the video, it's critical that we listen to the consumer. We don't assume that we know the answers, that we've got to spend time to listen and to understand. And we can talk about it in the breakout session. We've launched a program recently called the Entrepreneur in Residence Program, where we're bringing young entrepreneurs to live in our communities so that they can introduce their products to the consumers that they're going to be trying to offer them to, so that we're designing with the senior, not just for the
Okay,
senior.
what's young for an entrepreneur? Give some 70-year-old entrepreneurs.
Sorry, so it doesn't have to be a young entrepreneur. What we often found with the young entrepreneurs is they had great tech skills. They were able to apply all that they had learned about technology that worked for the millennials, and they thought, gosh, there's this huge aging market, there's this huge 50-plus market, there's this huge 65-plus market. All I hear about are the baby boomers. I'm going to design for seniors. But they didn't have the context of how seniors consume the technology. And so the opportunity is for them to come in and spend time in our communities with their customer. So, thank you.
All right, well, since I'm from Texas and you called him Mark and it's David, we're used to two-party first names there, Jimmy Bob, Mark David. So I'm going to continue the trend that Mark David started to stand up as well. I'm Steve Vandegrift. As Renee briefly alluded to, our company for the last 8 years has been dealing with the family, both the seniors and the family members, we call it the top of the funnel. They've had an elder event, they aren't really sure what to do, and they usually go online, either the senior or one of the family members, to try and figure out what should I do? What are my choices? What are my options? What are the costs associated, etc. That's the segment of the market we deal in, particularly for their care needs. So they've had an elder event, I've got to do something. Do I need somebody to come to the home? Do I want to look at a nursing home or all those products that Will just mentioned that no one's looking to buy? That's our real focus. And so that's who we are. And what I want to talk to you about a little bit, the first slide is, yeah, you're dealing with the senior, but you're not. In our world, you're dealing with the family. And we actually have statistics that show that, in fact, the family member is always, as Will just alluded to, is always involved in the decision. In fact, the family member, which in our demographic is usually an adult child who's a female, who's somewhere between 40 and 60 years old. That person is one of the primary decision makers. The daughter-in-law, etc. That's who you're dealing with. And in fact, in this case, looking for care, who are they searching for the care? What are they going to do in terms of either moving into some type of senior community or contracting for home care? There's a demonstrably higher conversion rate of actually taking action for that elder by that adult child, that typically woman 40 to 60 years old. And in fact, the adult child is taking care of that parent. It's almost a 300% better or faster taking action. Part of that is, unfortunately, the negative side of this. There are actually some providers of services that don't want to talk to the seniors. Why? Because the seniors want to talk. The seniors want to dig in. They want answers. To Dave's video and all that bit, listen, don't assume, put the products or services in context for me, not some millennial. What we're finding is that the seniors are rarely ignored in many cases. It's sad, but it's true, and our data shows that, in fact, many of these seniors are either ignored or literally thrown on the floor. I don't want to talk to this senior. And if you think about a business model that is, I need to get them on the phone, I need to talk to them, I need to qualify them because they're a lead, and I need to get them moved forward or not and drop them on the floor and move on and talk to the next person on the phone. Unfortunately, there are business models baked around that. And it's not conducive to education. It's not conducive to actually working with the family members as a whole and different needs and requirements, as both Will and David alluded to. It's not conducive to that. And it's sad, but it's true. So part of what we have to re-educate our business around is there may be more than one decision maker. The decision makers may have differing needs, and the decision makers need to be dealt with as a community, as a family unit. So it can come up from such things as, how are we going to pay for this? If we're moving, your dad has died, mom is now at the point where we need to move her into some type of assisted living community or something. Are we going to sell the house? How does it impact our inheritance? And there are all kinds of issues. Dad was a vet. Can mom qualify for veterans to pay for this? ... There's all kinds of issues that the family has to deal with, and or, as some of the ARP studies have shown, the unpaid family caregiver, in many cases that older daughter or whatever, is the one bearing the burden. And in fact, what happens is that family unpaid caregiver usually has to rally the siblings, the rest of the family members, to say, we need to take action. We typically see a huge increase in online searches right after the holidays. And it's happened for 8 straight years that I've been in this business. Now, I somewhat humorously make fun of it and say it's because everybody was around the table for Thanksgiving, mom fell on the mashed potatoes, all the siblings looked around and said, okay, we got to do something about mom. But in fact, it's true. It's when the family unit gets back together. It's when these people now are seeing early stage dementia or whatever other life event may have happened, and or the unpaid caregiver who's got the most stress, the most strain, the most issue to deal with, now has the siblings, the rest of the family are going to go, folks, I can't deal with this anymore. We have to do something. So part of the education in terms of the aging market is how to deal with the family, not just the senior and the various cohorts of seniors. And to what's already been talked about by the previous 2 speakers, if you're dealing with that 55, 60-year-old woman, that's a lot different than dealing with the senior who's 80, 82, 85, looking to move into one of Brookdale's communities. You've got to deal with them in different ways and deal with the entire issues around the family. That'd be one of the key messages I would leave you. We'll talk more about this in the Selling to Seniors breakout session. Second comment I'd make, tied into this, is the poor education that the industry's done. The industry as a whole is having a hard time educating these consumers around their options for care. It starts with, what are some of the semantics? My third bullet there. You know, you get a bunch of acronyms. CCRC, no disrespect to Brookdale. CCRC, SNFs, AL, respite care, private duty care. What does all this mean? I've just had an elder event in my family, and I'm trying to figure out what I need. And what you see are a lot of acronyms in many cases, and you don't really know what's there. And or you don't know how you're going to pay for it. And what we've seen in our research is the families always look first to the government. What is Medicare and Medicaid going to pay for? How does that work, et cetera, et cetera? How do I maneuver through that? That's one of the first and key things they want to know is, what type of care options do I have, and how is it going to be compensated, paid for, either through us, the family unit, and or in conjunction with other opportunities. Selling the house, staying in the house, doing a reverse mortgage, a vet, veterans will pay for some things. Did mom or dad have long-term care insurance policy? What does that pay for? ... There's lots of opportunities around that. And it's all around education so that they can make an informed decision. That's one of the biggest issues. Second issue, we all talk about mobile and the adoption of mobile. I totally agree with all the statistics that have already been talked about in these prior slides. Problem is, if you're looking at a small phone screen, it's really hard to get really good information on this small a form factor. It's really difficult. What we've had to do as a company is realize that we have to go engage these families on the phone. No matter what we show them online and all, as they use smartphones, iPad, pad-type devices, etc., there's no way they can get enough information in the context on a small form factor. They really need to talk things through and have somebody in a dialogue. That's really a critical piece of this issue. So mobile, although it is occurring in all the various age groups we talk about, it's actually exacerbating the education problem in many ways. You actually have to deal with the family and try and handle them in a larger context. Aging in place, we've talked about, that is the preference. Will made this comment as well. People want to prefer to stay in their homes as long as they possibly can. That's what they really want to do. What we're seeing is a lot of the providers are trying to deal with only the higher end of that market. People who can afford to pay $20, $25, $30 an hour for 15, 20, 30 hours a week of care. There's a huge opportunity in the mid to low end of the market because not everybody starts out needing 20 or 25 hours a week of care. They need a couple hours a week. Maybe the unpaid caregiver needs to take a break, needs to work part-time to pay some bills, maybe needs other things. I just need 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a week, somebody to check in on my mother or whatever it may be. The issues around this, though, are in many cases, again, AARP stats and others, there's 45 plus or minus million unpaid caregivers in the United States. And there's a lot of folks below the ability and the payment ability. And frankly, if you start getting up to 30 hours a week of care at $20, $25, $30 an hour, you ought to be looking at a senior community because it's roughly comparable, as opposed to having somebody come to your home and you get a better deal, meal plans, everything else. So part of it is there's an upper segment of the market that's getting served reasonably well, but the middle and lower segment of the market are really poorly served. And that's a big issue for the country, I think, going forward. Thank you very much.
All right. Any slides? No, that's not me.
That's fine. They're yours.
Well, the good thing about being last is you get to repeat what everybody else said. But if we repeat it 1, 2, 3, 4 times, we must be onto something and we should write it down. Okay. I'm from Phillips and I run our home monitoring business. It's the business that invented personal emergency response over 40 years ago. So that's what my business is all about, is really serving seniors, and we have a broader portfolio of solutions to help seniors, and we define that by 65 plus, in the home as well as in long-term and post-acute care. So my remarks are really going to be centered on what it means to serve seniors, and like my colleague said, it's really all about the needs. But it's about the needs for the ecosystem of not only the seniors, but the caregivers, and I'm going to throw one more new one in that you haven't heard about, which is the clinicians. So from a Phillips perspective, we look at healthcare and how do we transform the aging experience so that people can live with grace and dignity in the place they call home for as long as possible. And to do that well, you really need to consider the needs of all 3 constituencies. So I'm going to first talk about the needs of the senior and one of our customers. It's great to be in a business where you get to have the golden girl as one of your customers. So I look at 65 plus, and you heard Marc talk about the U.S. Census. Well, there's 650 million seniors globally today that are 65 plus, and as you heard, that's growing quite dramatically in some markets around the world, and it'll be 2 billion by 2020. So the pie's getting bigger, so yes, there is a lot of opportunity. Another key trend that's happening that we haven't talked about is longevity. So seniors are actually living longer. Used to be 47 was the average lifespan, then 74, and when my kids have kids, there's a 50-50 chance they're going to live to 100. So when you think about what that means, and you want to live with grace and dignity in the place you call home for as long as possible, what kind of services and solutions do we need to bring to the marketplace? Well, first of all, we need to understand the context, and we need to understand what seniors are up against. And unfortunately in healthcare, we haven't eradicated disease and chronic conditions. So we're going to have to deal with the fact that far and away the most seniors actually have a chronic condition, and 68% actually have 2 or more. And they also deal with issues about frailty, vision, hearing, cognitive issues, social issues, mental health issues with depression, all being very real issues that seniors deal with on a day-to-day basis. They also can have difficulties with doing daily activities of living, things like bathing, eating, getting around to the doctor's appointments. And all of these have to be considered when you think about the services and solutions that you want to offer. So in my business, we try to focus on the biggest opportunities. And if you were here last year, you might have heard me talk about the number one issue that we believe seniors deal with and that we don't really have the dialogue about is falling. 1 in 3 seniors will fall annually. It's a very real issue, and it's not one that we like to talk about. We do have commercials, some of my competitors have commercials which put it out there in your face, and that actually stigmatizes it and the issue. But there's, depending upon the cute way you want to think about it, there's more seniors treated in an emergency room for a fall than there are people treated for car accidents. Or there's another interesting one where a death occurs from a fall for seniors every 29 minutes, more frequently than a drunk driver causes an accident. So it's a very real issue, and what you don't know is that seniors don't want to tell you either. So if they can get up and they're seen to be fine, 50% of them won't tell a soul that they actually fell. So how do we deal with this? It's a huge issue, and it accounts for $34 billion of unwanted costs. So that's a huge market opportunity if we can not only detect falls and get timely help, we can shorten hospital stays, we can improve rehabilitation, get them back to home, which is where they want to be. And in the future, where we'd like to take technology is to actually be able to predict the likelihood of a fall and then to prevent it. So that's where the technology's going. It's a huge important senior need. Second key thing that's pretty much universal is medications, and you heard my colleagues talk a little bit about that. Seniors take meds. 42% take 5 or more, and they can take as many as 12, 15, and even more. But what is called med adherence is the likelihood to actually follow the doctor's orders on taking their medication is not so high. It's about 50% of the time within the year will they drop in terms of not following the doctor's orders. And that too has all sorts of consequences, including it can be death, high costs, pain, different sorts of outcomes. So there are solutions that are emerging, digitally connected solutions. They have to be easy to use, that can help improve adherence rates all the way up to like 96, 98%. And that does a lot of things. It gives back to the senior respect and dignity because they can do something that they couldn't previously do very well. It takes the pressure off the caregiver, and it actually helps the clinician because they now know whether or not the senior's taking the meds that they should take so that they can better manage their health. The third big category is the thing that I'm actually the most excited about because it's really about the future. And this is all about the fact that health is dynamic. And we're going to change, to transform aging and the experience that you have, this notion of going to the doctors once in a while, taking blood tests and information about your vitals once in a while, it just really provides the environment of inefficient and ineffective care. And that's why our healthcare costs are so high. So if we can have the day where we can actually have senior wearables that have real good data, that are easy to use, don't have a stigma associated with them, and we can then help clinicians and caregivers understand how mom's doing. And this is one of the newer innovations that, for example, we launched last year, but it's just the beginning because the world's going to get better in this area. So we have a technology called CareSage, which can predict the likelihood that mom's going to go to the hospital in the next 30 days. With that comes, wow, well, what do you do with that information, and what kind of interventions, what kind of new care delivery models can we do so that mom's not rushing to the hospital in an emergency transport? That's going to bring costs down, satisfaction up, etc. So this is the wave of the future, and that's what we're so excited about for seniors, and having them have an enjoyable life rather than so many times back and forth to the hospital. The other thing, a couple key points, and I'm going to echo with what my colleague said, is we do have to deal with the reality of technology adoption, though. There are not as many seniors taking these wearables that should be taking the wearables. They're life-saving devices, and they're still not readily adopted, even though they are designed in mind with the senior's skin, and the senior's clothes, even though they are designed with battery life so that the seniors don't have to change batteries, even though they're designed so that they can be worn in the shower where falls happen. The technology is there, but the adoption isn't on something as simple that actually can save your life. Similarly, smartphone adoption, computers, iPads, it's hard to provide a breadth of services in those areas because we find that in my population, there's only about a 27% adoption. And even in my most early adopter tech seniors that I have in my base, it's only about a 60% of them have an iPad. So we have to deal with the reality of today, but I think it's changing rapidly, and in the next 10 years, I think that's when the pendulum will really shift. My last sentence here is really about, there's a whole host of things that go on with seniors, and some of which haven't been touched upon. The need for transportation, there are abuse issues, and that comes into play with a big trust that starts to go on with seniors and how your company can interact with them because of the abuse that they've seen, financial and legal needs that folks talked about. Okay. Some other customers of ours now are caregivers. We happen to be delighted to have Lisa Gibbons and her dad Carlos and her doctor in our fold as a customer, and it's she became a spokesperson for us because we saved her dad's life. He was having a heart attack. Thank goodness he was wearing a Philips Lifeline and did get the help in a timely manner so that he's back in home. Well, Lisa happens to be a caregiving advocate and was before any of this even happened. And you've heard a little bit about what the caregiver pressures and challenges are. There's 34 million of them, which is a large target market. As you heard, they spend a lot of money today, and they are what I call sandwiched. They're overwhelmed because they have families, 70-some% have children of their own, 76% are working full-time, and then on top of it now all of a sudden they have the responsibility of becoming a caregiver. And they have to help with at least one activity of daily living. So there's consequences related to missing work, there's consequences on pressure, and the one that I hate the most is when they say to me, my relationship with my loved one has become transactional instead of relational, and that is just something we're going to have to change. So huge market opportunity here if we can take the burden off of caregivers while minding for the seniors. Okay, and last but not least, you haven't heard too much about this one, but from a Philips perspective, it's really key. You've heard about healthcare reform, the Affordable Care Act, and our need that our system must transform, and it really must, because we're the #1 expense in healthcare around the world in GDP, 17.5%, but we don't have the best outcomes in the world. So it's an inefficient and ineffective system, and it must transform. So what's happening now is, as we're trying to shift from things called volume-based care, where you go see your doctor, to value-based care, where the doctors are actually incented on things like your outcome, your satisfaction, whether or not the care was good or whether or not readmission rates matter, you went back into the hospital. Why are we trying to do that, and why is healthcare reform all about that? Well, because it's just like any other business. You got to worry about satisfying your customers. You have to worry about the quality of the service you're providing. These are just normal things, but it's not normal in the healthcare world. So how do we help the doctors? Because they're the ones really trying to take care of our seniors. And so we need to help them with the change that they must do. And some of what they say to me is, I now have to be accountable for what's called a population. I have to be accountable for seniors outside of my 4 walls. I know what I can manage and I can transform within a hospital setting, but what do I do when they're at home? Are they taking their meds? Are they frail? And we know that if you look at what's called an acuity pyramid, the top of the acuity are the people that need the most help and attention. The bottom of the acuity are fine and really don't need too much. The medium ones are kind of, you need to watch. Well, 25% of seniors in the moderate acuity will actually move up the acuity pyramid every year. So the trick, just like I talked about that, if I can predict, and while I'm monitoring at home, that of the 1,000 patients that you're monitoring, pay attention to these 3 today. These 25, watch them, maybe check in on them. That's the kind of capability that will enable us to transform healthcare that we're so excited about at Philips. And with that, that's it.